Hello, and welcome to the Faculty Forum Online, a program of the MIT Alumni Association. Today our theme is MIT in the Age of Digital Learning. I am Lou Alexander, the Director of Alumni Education at MIT, and will serve as moderator. As you can see from your screen, this is an interactive platform, and if you would like to pose a question, simply put in your first name, geographic location, and your question. For our part, we will attempt to get to as many of them as possible. Our guest today is Sanjay Sarma, who is a professor in mechanical engineering and is MIT's first Director of Digital Learning. To get into it, Sanjay, could you just start to give us a sense of this new landscape of digital learning in higher education, but more specifically, how MIT is evolving its vision of this new world?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting. I like to say that in some ways, digital learning, which might seem very high-tech, actually takes us back deep into our history. MIT was founded with the principle of mens et manus, mind and hand. Yeah. And over the last 50 years, what has happened is, as the volume of knowledge has gone up, we've done more mens and less manus, right?
True.
We've become more lectures where sometimes our students don't pay attention. Our students probably pay more attention than most other schools, but lectures aren't as dynamic, and less labs, less startups, less field work, and so on. So the real reason for digital learning, ironically, is, people think digital learning is distance learning, it's online learning, yeah, all that. But really the reason we're doing it is so that our students can prepare before they come into the classroom, so that the classroom is more engaging and exciting, right? I mean, it's no coincidence that the MIT, the Great Seal of MIT, has, as I like to tell my students, a guy with a sledgehammer in it, right? And in fact, that is the history of MIT. What William Barton Rogers did in 1861 was he tried to bridge two worlds which had grown distant. The predominant mode of education in the 1860s was the Harvard model, not to pick on our friends down the street. But the Harvard model was, learning by memorization, right? Learning in Latin, science in Latin. It was remote from application to a large extent. And really what William Barton Rogers did was, in the charter, say that he would dignify industrial arts and sciences and bring the study of science and industry together. Even the word technology was only about 30 or 40 years old. Yes. And it was kind of in your face to propose this new Institute of Technology, right? It's actually, if you think about it, just historic and very innovative.
Yes.
Since then, we've heard of, there have been great movements in education. Maria Montessori, for example, created the Montessori School of Education, which was all about engaging. But really, and now we have the maker movement, right? Maker spaces. But MIT was the original maker space, right?
Yes.
And our labs, our new campus, which will be 100 years old, I believe, next year, was designed to be a maker space. It was the original Montessori school. The scientific definition of that would be something like constructivism or constructionism. Those are the two words that are associated with this form of learning, by doing with your hands and your mind all engaged. Field work, if it's, if you're taking a humanities subject, doing field work, having discussions, applying it to the real world. If you're learning, engineering, making something. If you're learning science, mixing chemicals or doing an experiment. That was a very fundamental breakthrough. And online education is all about bringing those things back together for our students. Now, if we're going to do that, we will generate incredible digital assets. And it is also in our nature to be slightly quixotic, right? We did that with OpenCourseWare more than 10 years ago. We gave it away to the world. And if you're going to generate these assets, what we do with edX is we're saying, look, people want to take these classes, you can take them for free, right? But we also have a consortium with other universities, over almost 40 universities. We have an open source platform. And frankly, we will even license this content to other schools who want it. If, for a student who wants to take it for free, that's great. But if a school wants to license it, this is like a new digital textbook, they can license it in a not-for-profit way, We want to subsidize the great expense. But let's not kid ourselves. We're doing this for MIT first.
Yes. Thank you. I mean, this certainly touches very broadly on a number of themes, and the questions are coming in, but before we get to them, I would like to ask one or two of my own. And one thing I've observed is there's a fair amount of confusion both within the alumni population and sort of in general about the differences in these platforms of MITx and edX. I wonder if you could say a little bit about them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the confusion is natural because they started together. And let me explain what the differences are. Think of edX as the movie theater. Think of MITx as the content, right? So we're like Disney, and edX is the theater you watch the movie in. It's as simple as that. Now we have a consortium. HarvardX is another producer, not as good as Disney, but maybe a little bit similar in the sense that HarvardX produces content for edX. BerkeleyX produces content for edX. Now, the evolution of this is when we started, we called everything MITx, and over time we realized that it was better to separate the two and to create a common platform, which was open source and standardized for the whole, for all the universities that wanted to participate. And each university could then contribute. That's the difference.
It's a very nice analogy also. It does help solidify these things. Let me ask one other question. How might digital learning change how alumni and friends interact with the Institute?
I think that's a rich topic in so many ways. Let's talk about what alums could get out of this. First of all, think about the way we educate today. At the end of 4 years, if a student is an undergrad, or at the end of 2 years, if the student is a master's student, or the end of 4 or 5 years, if they're a PhD student, 3 to 5 years, we say, okay, goodbye, you're done, right? But the world is changing so fast, and things are becoming obsolete. New technologies are being developed. New social theories are emerging. Economics is a fast-changing field. Science is a fast-changing field. Architecture is a fast-changing field. So, personally, I believe not in the word that people use is continuing education, but perhaps the future is what I call continuous education, right? Where every employee at every company in a few years might spend 2 hours a week upgrading their skills, right? Yeah. It's like a lifeline of latest, greatest. What better place to get it from than MIT? And alums should and could benefit from this first and foremost, right? Yes. Not just through our regular classes, but we also have professional education classes. And frankly, many of us believe that professional education classes, which are paid classes, alums should receive a very significant discount, right? So the result is alums, I think, can benefit a great deal from this content. However, on the flip side, alums can contribute a lot as well. So, for example, we're going to be doing classes around the world, and what if we just did an entrepreneurship class? What if alums in California or in Greece, or in Poland, or in China, or in Israel could become mentors to these students? Yeah. So that's a great way to give back to the community and participate in the mission of MIT.
Yes, in that last thought, I mean, there's been a lot of discussion here on campus about how this will change the campus experience, and I haven't seen a lot of discussion about how it would change the alumni experience, and this is certainly looking in that direction. So I think it's quite good. Following on that, Peter in Newton, Massachusetts, asks, what will it take for MIT to give course credit for an online course to a student enrolled in an MIT bachelor's or graduate program?
That's a complex question. I'll try and break it down. First of all, I just want to say that we have a task force right now that I co-chair along with the treasurer, EVP Israel Ruiz, and Professor Karen Wilcox. Yes. And we're looking at the future of education at MIT. And that task force, which has students, staff, professors, we've been at it actually more than a year now. And we published an interim report in November. And one of the things we looked at was what makes MIT so special? And the scientific term we came up for it was the magic of MIT. You know, there's something really amazing that happens here. Students bump into each other, they have ideas, they meet in coffee shops, they meet in labs, professors bump into each other, and the co-presence of really smart people, really driven and urgent people creates magic, right? Now, we have no illusions that the online courses, good as they are, will only replicate some aspects of the MIT education, the instruction. Right? Sometimes people say, well, you're giving the stuff away for free. Why will anyone come to MIT? And we go, you're not here just to hear me repeat something I've said many times. You're here for all the other stuff, the hidden stuff, which is more important in some ways, the implicit curriculum of MIT. The reason I say this is the instruction, in our view, is not yet to the point where we can give our students credit for it. So an MIT student, just taking a course online, my job is to make it as good as possible. But I'll tell you that what they get at MIT is just far richer. So we don't give credit to our students. Having said that, a lot of other places are giving credit to courses that students around the world take through MITx. And I will use an analogy. Is that if you don't have access to a lot, then an MITx course is very good, right?
Yeah, good point.
But if you have access to MIT, the MITx course helps you elevate the MIT experience, but it's not a replacement.
Yeah. Well, actually, this is a much broader question from Juan. It says, how could these tools increase the international reach of MIT, and how might it integrate university education with other lower levels of education?
Great question. Yeah. The majority of our students are from around the world, and they're from India is the second largest. China, actually, we haven't broken through, and we're working on it. Part of it is language. Part of it is internet access and getting videos into the People's Republic. But we will over time, and we have a nice approach for that. But then we get people from all over the world, more than 195 countries. So our international reach has been tremendous, and it's growing. In fact, we're hitting more and more countries. Whole new countries are kind of, the popularity is increasing. K-12, lower levels of education, I think it is inevitable. It's in our future. We're just beginning to dabble. For example, if you go to the Office of Digital Learning website at MIT, you will see, if you just do a search on Google for MIT K-12, you will see videos that our students have produced for K through 12 students on science and technology STEM subjects, which I think you'll find very interesting. So it's a matter of time before we get drawn into it, and frankly, we're very excited about it.
Yeah, it sounds exciting. And here's, this is a little bit different question from Steve in Silver Spring, Maryland. He asks, what digitally enabled teaching learning activities are most common so that semester after semester, a student is likely to be asked to learn using these methods?
It's again a very interesting question. There's a broad theme, which is active engagement, so that students do the more passive stuff, which is listening, before they come into the classroom. So the classroom is more about doing stuff, right? That's the MIT way. Yeah. But we're also learning, we have some really interesting insights into how effective this business of small videos followed by instant assessments is in learning. Okay, and the breakthroughs are actually quite amazing. What we're discovering is the ideal length of a video is 6 to 10 minutes.
I see.
Now think about it. You can't do that in a regular lecture, right? It's just the setup and breakdown of a lecture just makes that infeasible. Right. And this isn't the Nintendo generation. Okay, this isn't this generation. This has been true for a long time. We've known this for a long time. It was just infeasible to do short lectures. Number one. Number two, when you have a lecture, and then if you have questions immediately after, they have a fairly profound impact on learning, because they force you to go back and retrieve stuff from your short-term memory, which improves your learning. This is well known, but now we're able to do it. But the third is, now when you move to the next topic, you know the stuff. So you're building stuff on strong foundations to shaky foundations, and your feedback is instant. And instant feedback is huge. Yeah. And finally, the professor now knows where students struggled, and the in-class activities can focus on that. Right? So it's a fascinating array of possibilities. I actually think we're on the threshold of a fairly fundamental change in the way we learn.
Yeah, it sounds like it might be a more organic way of learning. I mean,
Yeah.
if you can really sort of break up into smaller increments and move it along that way. That's Dirta in California has actually a question that comes right on after this. What are the best ways to make digital learning more hands-on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's almost a contradiction in terms, right? Is digital hands-on?
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, gaming technology has advanced so much that you can actually kind of recreate some lab experiences virtually, right? So you can have, for example, you can have students design a circuit on a computer and plug it into a virtual oscilloscope and see how it virtually performs. So that's kind of taking some real stuff and putting it on the computer. So there are great breakthroughs actually happening in 700X, which is our biology course taught by Eric Lander. You know, students are able to fold molecules, things that you can't do on paper, right? There's amazing stuff. So that's making the digital hands-on. But, you know, it's not hands-on. Let's not kid ourselves. But having said that, remember, MIT is also the place that created, Mitch Resnick created Lego Mindstorm.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So distributed hands-on, little kits that students buy that they can do things at home, could be very empowering, early stages. But, you know, I think it's an exciting, these are all exciting possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. Bob in Concord, Mass. asks, what have we learned from edX about the cost of creating a MOOC, both at MIT and from other partners? Once implemented, what have we learned about the cost of delivering an edX MOOC?
Yeah, it's a good question. The first MOOCs were expensive.
I'm
right?
sure.
And they were expensive because, frankly, we were learning on the job. And someone's got to do it. You know, a few of us, Harvard, we and a few others were the first to do it. But we've learned a lot of lessons about how to really go about it. For example, we've learned that, you know, why do a whole course? Do a quarter of a course. In fact, a course is determined by on-site learning, right? So one emerging theme is modularity. Now, if you do a module, it's much cheaper, and also it's much easier for the professor to do it organically. So the costs go down, right? Now, once you set up an online course, running it, those costs have come down as well. For example, one of the real efforts into running a course is actually maintaining the fora, right? Running the forums. But we've learned that the forums have a certain cadence and self-governance. If you figure it out, you can have the forum, you create community teaching assistants, so to say, that manage the forum. And so, you know, these are all breakthroughs. Right now, it's much less effort than running a regular course at MIT to run a MOOC.
Yes.
Much less effort.
Yes.
But we want it to be an order of magnitude less. We're not there yet, but we're pushing.
Yes. Yes. There's a rather evolved question from John in Wilmington, Delaware. I think it's an important question. It says, MIT offers a number of courses specifically designed for online delivery, including Bill Aulette's 15309X and the X Series multi-course certifications. However, the 15390X is only a portion of the content in the on-campus 15390 course. So that's understood. What steps are being taken to provide edX courses that match on-campus content that could contribute to a future MIT degree?
Well, as I said, you know, giving credit for taking a course purely online is something that's a bridge that we haven't crossed yet. Yeah. Frankly, if you're on campus, you're taking 15390 with Bill Aulette. You get to talk to Bill Aulette, right? You get to actually try a startup and get Bill to give you feedback about why, you know, it might work or how you might want to shape it. You get some of that, but you can't get all of that online. The second thing is, in fact, 15390X, if you think about it, is a module. It's not the full class, as you said. It's only a portion of the class. And so we have a lot of classes which are half classes, right? Now, to get a certificate, an X Series certificate, you need to do a significant amount. That we leave that to the professor or the instructor to figure out what is a deep dive. And Bill Aulette's class, that 15390X, we're developing other modules which will come on online at some point, and together they form an X Series.
Well, I think this underlines the fact that this really is a whole new landscape that everyone is really trying to figure out how best to use, and how
That's
we
right.
go into it.
And if I may,
Yeah.
why do our semesters start the 1st of February and end in May, right? It's because 100 years ago, we had farming, we had, other
That's right.
cycles to,
Yeah.
the solar cycle, right? Stonehenge was based on, on things like this. The online world frees us from some of these, not all of them, right? For example, you might think of a student who takes a semester off and is doing a project, just consuming a module because it serves that project.
Yes.
There's some interesting possibilities that will open up, and we're already seeing that, and we're actually doing an experiment this summer where we're going to be offering blended courses on campus using the online content, and are using a lot more hands-on.
Well, it sounds like things are really developing very rapidly in this world, and it'd be interesting to revisit this in 5 years to see exactly what has shaken out through this process.
I think we'll have progress much more quickly than 5 years.
Okay.
I'll be back sooner.
Okay, good.
You can't get rid of me for that long.
Carlos in New York is asking, what is edX's competition? Is it Coursera? How would you qualify them? What are the differences and similarities?
That's a great question. In some ways, it's kind of interesting. We did OCW, Open Courseware, more than a decade ago. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the technologies that went to edX, MIT developed in the 2000s. And then Coursera got a jump on us. It was a private company and got launched. Now, MIT has always felt that education is best done through not-for-profit, and as far as possible, open use, while understanding that these things are to pay for themselves, but in a not-for-profit way. So we launched edX after Coursera got launched.
Yes.
Here's the good news, though. Our approach to edX is, first of all, Coursera has to make a lot of money to get acquired, so for profit, right? We need to make it self-sustaining. What that means is we can take a much longer-term view of things, right? We can focus on quality. Our partners are Harvard and Berkeley and Caltech, and we're great partners here, right? And we also focus a lot on rich interaction. Yes. So in Eric Lander's class, you can fold protein molecules, right? So yes, certainly Coursera is competition in one aspect of edX, which is when we try and educate just the world. But the whole other aspect of it is, as I said, more important, which is we're educating our own students using online.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're different. I'd say we have a different approach. I know the Coursera folks well. I wish them well. I think what they're doing is interesting. I just think we're kind of in different games, but at some level we are competition as well. Yes. But it keeps us healthy, keeps us on our toes.
Good. There's a similar question from Eric in Longmont, Colorado. Is there a business model being considered for the future? How would you image either edX, other MOOCs, or the professors who create content make money on this incredible and invaluable resource?
That's a great question. Professors today, for example, write textbooks.
Yes.
Right? And actually a lot of MIT textbooks are the prototypical textbooks for fields, entire fields. Yes. And we want our professors to be able to participate in the revenues that you generate from online material because it takes away from their textbook activities. Yes. And so we have a model that we're actually testing right now. Yes. How does edX make money? There are two models that directly relate to our courses. One is they offer our courses on a freemium basis, so students can take them for free. But if they want a certificate, they pay for the certificate because edX has to proctor the certificate. So there's an effort on edX's part as well. That's one. And the second is we actually are already licensing our courses to other universities. Yes. And then when another university licenses our online digital content, it's like a digital textbook, they get to tweak it. They get to change the dates when it's run, insert their own material, change the exams, remove some material, adapt it to their needs. And they pay for that. And so these are two models that generate revenues for our courses. Then we also have professional education courses. We just did one for big data with Bhaskar.
Yes.
And that's paid only, and that generates revenues as well. In fact, that was a very successful course.
Similar question, or another side of this from Michael in London, who asks, when a popular professor moves from MIT, do they take their MOOC with them?
Well, I mean, why would anyone leave MIT?
Well, okay. On the off chance.
On the off chance. So we designed the IP policy to protect professors' rights. So in the pre-MOOC world, when a professor writes a textbook, they own the text assets. So they're moved to another school, they own that right. So our policy is backwards compatible. They can take the text assets, but they give us the license to continue to teach that course.
I see.
And because you can't have the rug slipped out from under our feet, right? And so someone else can come and teach the class. So we're aware of that, and we have a policy by which we protect the professor. We also protect MIT.
Yes, great. Now this is interesting. Robert in California asks, are there any ongoing studies or evaluations looking at MIT-X, at edX, and digital learning?
Yeah, just a lot of studies. I mean, on so many levels. Early stages of, and the results are very good, of how learning on campus changes. Studies on instant feedback, impact, and those early results are very promising. Flipped classrooms, that takes time to do. So there we don't have any results yet.
Yes.
We have some ongoing experiments. Lot of analysis of big data from edX, which is really fascinating. And we published a bunch of reports on that and a whole bunch of papers that come out of MIT. And then finally, one of our colleagues is actually sending out anthropologists to meet students and study students around the world taking edX classes to see how it works. Because, frankly, it's a fascinating area, and we're noticing these really interesting dynamics that are very intriguing, and we want to learn more.
Well, that's really a good lead into this next question from Mike in Burlington. He's asking about a different side of it than we've been considering. He says, what changes will digital learning have on the way we teach students with special needs?
Oh, that's a great question. Great question. One of the great things about putting your assets in digital format is you give people so many different ways to access the material. Some folks are visual, they like the videos. Some folks, all our visual stuff is annotated, right? So that means it helps folks with accessibility challenges, right? Because the annotation, for example, can go into Braille. Some students prefer to just read the annotations. Okay. Some are oral; they like to listen to the voice and then read afterwards. Some prefer to go straight to the quick assessments to see what they understood and then go back to the video, and we're seeing them all. And the big data shows all that. Yes. Right? So I would say this is early days, but because there's so many modalities, we're already seeing that folks with different needs, special needs, are interacting with the system in different ways.
As we wind down here, we are beginning to run out of time. Let me ask this last question. From Kevin in Cambridge, so someone local. What's been the most popular class for edX and I guess MIT-X, and how many people have been enrolled?
The most popular class, but that's a bit of an artifact of timing, was the first class, which was circuits and systems. Yeah. But since then, the computer science classes have consistently drawn a lot of attention because they have the most direct vocational, job-seeking impact, right? Both for high school students because they think it's a good skill to have, and also folks later in their careers who want to, learn Python or learn latest in programming. But actually, the funny thing is that if you go look beyond that, our entrepreneurship class has, tens of thousands of people, right? The class on global poverty had a lot of folks. So we're seeing different staying power, and also some courses have high enrollments, but the staying power is low. It's more browsing. Others have lower enrollment, but the staying power is high, right? So what I'm saying is that the enrollment number, I think, we were fixated on it, but we're learning that it's actually much deeper than that,
Yes. Well, Sanjay, thank you. You have perhaps one of the best jobs here at MIT. I mean, you really are at the crux of something that's going to have profound impact in the future. I envy you. Thank you so much for joining us and for giving us the time. Thank you to the viewing audience. If you would like to continue this discussion, you'll be able to through our blog, Slice of MIT. The link will be on the screen at the end of this. And you can always go look at this and other programs in the archives on the Learn page in MIT Alumni Association website. So, thank you again for this program. Join us in June for the last of the series this season. And with this, we conclude our snapshot of MIT today on May 13th, 2014. Thank you.